Hey everybody, hopefully I am live. It was doing something funky there. Hopefully it's live and recording. But good morning, it's Coach Jessica, and I just want to spend a few minutes continuing on the subject of our thought life because it's something that I started talking about the other day, and I shared with you guys that we have over 60,000 thoughts a day, which again, the idea that can be overwhelming. But our motivation for everything that we do, whether we act or don't act, whether something becomes a behavior or not, it all starts in our thought life. And so this is the meat of what we have to deal with when we are working to overcome all kinds of eating disorders, whether you have anorexia, bulimia, compulsive eating, emotional eating, binge eating disorder. It's all about our thought life because a thought is where it starts. First it's a thought, then it becomes a plan, then it becomes an action, and then that action repeated over time becomes a behavior. So I really want to focus on, especially in tomorrow's call, how do we overcome that? How do we keep a thought from becoming a plan? How do we keep that plan from becoming an action? And then how do we keep from repeating an action if we've been through that and it becoming a destructive behavior? And even beyond that, if we are in a cycle of that, if you have a cycle of destructive behavior, how do I stop that cycle and start to have a new thought pattern? So that's what we're going to be focused on tomorrow's call, as well as anything else that you guys want to carry. But I want to reiterate something. I introduced you to this idea that some of your thoughts are sabotaging thoughts. They're not thoughts that actually originate with you. They come from a voice of sabotage. And I shared with y'all that, like, for me, it was freeing to realize that I wasn't fighting with myself. I wasn't fighting my own thoughts. I was fighting thoughts from Ed, which we call that sabotaging voice. So I kind of wanted to tie a couple things together. I had mentioned last week, we had started talking about triggers, how that in certain situations we are more vulnerable to a barrage of thoughts, especially thoughts that offer to comfort us, or thoughts about how food will fix things for us. And so I want to tie that together for you. So first, you're in a situation where a trigger happens. You get too hungry, you get too angry, you get too lonely, you get too tired, you get too anxious, whatever your triggers are. And what happens after that is you become vulnerable. You are in a place where the thought of being rescued from those feelings is so good that when you get that enemy thought from Ed that says, hey, eat, you won't be so lonely, or eat, you won't be so tired, we are more susceptible to saying, yes, please rescue me, without really stopping to think whether that's the truth. And so I want to tie those two things together because, sometimes you have a food thought and kind of in your own willpower, or in your own experience, or because you're not in one of those trigger zones, you're able to sort of work through it like, no, I'm not going to eat bread. That doesn't make sense. But other times you're like, why can't I fight that thought today? I fought it yesterday. Why am I having trouble fighting it today? And it's because that in the midst of vulnerability, those thoughts become much more powerful because we are seeking relief. But I don't want to focus a lot on that part of it. What I really want to focus on in what tomorrow's conversation is really going to be about on our live call is, what is the solution? What do we do with sabotaging thoughts? Because again, we can't help that we have those thoughts, but one of the things we can do is start to really realize those times in our lives when we're vulnerable. And then what we can do is we can capture those thoughts. And I think that's the part that's very empowering, understanding that a thought doesn't have to become a plan. If you can catch a thought while it's just a thought, it never even turns into a plan where you're putting together the steps of making it happen. You also have another opportunity when you catch yourself planning to do something that's destructive. In the midst of that, you can capture that thought before that plan becomes an action. You can reach out for help. There's other things that you can do. And then finally, even if the thought became a plan, the plan became an action, it doesn't have to become a repeating behavior in your life. Just because you did something today or just because you did it this morning doesn't mean you have to do it again this afternoon. And it's all wrapped up in what we believe. We believe, since I messed up this morning, I have to go ahead and repeat that behavior this afternoon, which is that lie of I have to start again tomorrow. So really overcoming the beliefs that we have about our behaviors and why we act on our thoughts and what food's going to do for us is part of the solution. But I really want to pull all that together tomorrow. And so the focus of our conversation, and I think it should be a pretty powerful conversation tomorrow, is the control and the power we do have over this process. I wanted to explain it to you and break it down so you can look back and think about in your own life and even realize today, as you're sitting there with all your 60,000 thoughts that are coming towards you, that there are certain thoughts that if you sit there and let them circle in your mind and you ruminate on them, they always turn into ultimately a behavior for you, or they turn into an action that is harmful. So I just want to make sure that your mind is open to that, and that you're really thinking about your own thoughts. Again, I said I was going to prove to you that we all have Ed, that voice of sabotage, and I'll do that too. And one of the ways that we know that that's true is that Ed plants the same thoughts in your head that he plants in mine. And if you and I are having the exact same thoughts, there's not telepathy happening. It's because that's what Ed does. It's proof that there is a present of a saboteur. And again, we'll get into some of those specifics tomorrow, but I really just want you focused on your thought life. But more than that, I want you to focus on the fact that there's a solution. We don't have to give in to every thought we have. There's evidence of that. I mean, again, if you have a violent thought, and we all do, let's be real, we are human. Things happen and you might feel angry and you might feel like doing something drastic, but you don't do it. Why? Because you stop and you think through what the consequence will be. The secret is to learn that I can capture any thought that I find is going to lead me to destruction. So if I have a violent thought and I act on that, I know it's going to lead me to prison, right? Or it may even lead me to being physically hurt back, or something like that. Being able to see your food thoughts the same way, and being able to halt to capture those things and reject them because of the future consequence, is a big part of stopping that pattern. So anyway, I hope that tomorrow will feel really hopeful for you, because I think anytime you can feel empowered, that there are so many points in this process that you can break this down and overcome the thought before it ever has to turn into a destructive behavior. I think that's very freeing, and I think that's really, if you can wrap your arms around that, along with accepting that you have a disorder and that you need to go through this process of capturing thoughts and shutting them down, you can get free. I'm celebrating my 6-year anniversary of freedom, and that's so exciting to me. It's just really got me thinking about how far I've come in terms of the way that I think and see things. But I never forget where I started. And I will tell you this, as much as I say, well, yes, I'm free, I don't engage in food behaviors that harm me, we all, I don't care who you are, every person on the planet is going to have to deal with destructive thoughts or harmful thoughts or thoughts that are sabotaging at some point. So long after you are free from having to constantly fight food thoughts, you will fight other things in your life. Some people fight other addictions, and some people fight, self-destructive thoughts that don't have anything to do with food. Learning to capture your thoughts and control them, or control what happens to the thought, will serve you well in every area of your life. And I have really seen that over the last several years. I've been able to overcome all kinds of things that should tear a person to pieces. And the reason those thoughts have not done that, and the reason that I don't act on, again, those impulses that would harm me, is because of this process that I went through of overcoming Ed. So this is a really, really important part of this, and I hope that if you can grab onto this, I really want a lively conversation. I hope a lot of you guys can be on. I hope you'll speak up. I hope you'll ask questions. I hope you'll talk about your concerns. This is something that takes action, and that goes back to what I said a couple weeks ago. In order to get well, in order to live a life of freedom, we actually have to do something. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we have to do something. We can't be content to just sit with our thoughts and let them run us, because eventually they will turn into destruction. This is where you say, I'm going to do something, and I am going to work this process to shut these thoughts down, and it's going to be worth it. At first it takes a lot of effort, and then it becomes like your new natural. But anyway, looking forward to spending some time with y'all in the morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Same link as always, and looking forward to helping you feel empowered to take control over those thoughts that are harassing you. Hope y'all have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.